Interesting. I mean, I think it bored out of passion, right? But over time, I've always maintained the idea that many of us are born with a purpose. And early on, we learned that there are three things that can contribute to you achieving purpose. It could be passion, it could be potential, it could be profession. So a lot of people do not know, but AREAi didn't start as AREAi. It was Learn to Lead Foundation, interestingly. And the idea was to go to secondary schools to do outreaches on how to hack WAEC questions. Because then I felt, having eight distinctions out of 9 that led to the scholarships that I had, I felt that, the problem, I do not understand the problem. I just felt, let's go into schools and support students, until I met a guy called Ken Carters. And, meeting him, explaining what I was trying to achieve, and him making me realize that you're just wasting your time if you do not take time to understand the problem and sit down to devise actionable strategies to address that. So, I went back to the drawing board and I restructured the vision and mission of AREAi. And then everything was deliberate, right? So the vision was clear, which is to improve the access and quality of education available to poor and vulnerable children in rural communities. As at then, we used to say across Africa, that is still the focus, but there is no point transcending into other countries without ensuring that vision is actualized in Nigeria. And the mission then too was very simple. We wanted to mobilize financial, physical, and material resources to be able to support schools as well as communities in enabling their children or students to improve the academic attainment or educational outcomes. So pretty much that was how we started. That was what inspired trying to just make a change, acknowledging my privilege and trying to channel that privilege into something of significance beyond my own personal life and towards achieving purpose as I understood it then. In terms of what we have been able to achieve, which would be, indices of accomplishments for me, would be we have moved from a phase then at the beginning when we are focused on technical and infrastructural support for under-resourced schools to developing and implementing systemic and institutionalized solutions, which is what I believe are the go-to responses that we need to address some institutionalized challenges or problems that we have with the educational system in Nigeria. So at the beginning, when we were just looking for people to donate books, to set up makeshift libraries in schools, looking for organizations to donate educational infrastructure to support the lack of basic infrastructure in schools, recruiting volunteer teachers who are under training in NCs and colleges of education to fill in as pro bono teachers in schools. We have moved from that point to going on to, number one, developing something called Digilens, which is Nigeria's first mobile learning solution that works on USSD and SMS. It is one of our most impactful interventions as we speak. We deployed this, during the COVID-19 period as a COVID-19 intervention, and it was really instrumental to the support we were able to create, particularly for children and students in rural schools and low-income communities. And for me, that was significant, going from a time when we do not even understand how to leverage technology for the population that we seek to serve, which are rural students and underserved populations, right? That's one metric of accomplishment for me. We have grown from a point of just focusing on, let's just do something, but do something that actually delivers not only on impact, but at the same time sustainability and replicability, and that is really important. Another one would be, we've gone from building Digilens to starting something called Fast Track. Fast Track is also one of our flagship programs that seek to leverage technology to enable children to read and write and do basic arithmetic under 3 months. And yes, I won't fail to mention, the Education Digital Equity Initiative we just completed. I would pride in that project funded by the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office to be the first local or indigenous digital gap and needs assessment ever conducted by any organization in Nigeria. when you measure in terms of organizational capacity, usually we used to talk about both direct and indirect beneficiaries. As of now, I would say we've done direct 50,000 beneficiaries over the last 8 years. I mean, AREAi started in 2014 till now, 50,000, and we are hoping to add more, and that is direct beneficiaries. If we should talk about indirect, we have some projects or interventions we've done that has cumulative effects, right? And I can estimate the indirect beneficiaries to be up to 1 million. And it's always a thing of joy to know that as an organization that seeks to reach learners at scale, to have done 50,000 is a huge accomplishment. And for an organization trying to implement systemic solutions, it is really huge. I will always say that non-profit organizations like us cannot replace the work of the government. We are there to complement. So the first set of the big step in transforming education for Nigerian children will come from a responsible leader. And when I mean responsible, I mean those who understand the need for tailored educational investment into the right channels, right? There is no unilateral solution to educational decadence in Nigeria. It must be multi-layered or multi-dimensional, because the problem is not only about poor literacy skills, it's also about lack of teacher motivation, it's also about outdated curriculum. So it's a lot, right? And the approach that we have taken that seemed to go to be beneficial at the end of the day would be having thematic focus areas. We work in education, but I tell people that we are extremely focused on access and quality, and there is an interpretation of that, right? So I will use the UNICEF model of quality education to illustrate how, from my own knowledge as an educational development practitioner, how Nigeria as a state, with collaboration with organizations like us, can improve the state of education, right? So UNICEF says there are 5 things that should be paid attention to when you want to improve educational quality: learners, learning environment, content, processes, and outcome. So let's start from the learners. They said learners must be well fed and well nourished, supported in learning by their families and their communities. And another thing important in that is also the fact that they must have functional skills. If we have organizations who have decided to focus on that squarely, it would be tantamount to them ensuring that we hold that end of that learners. Let's go to learning environment. They say learning environments must be safe. And in that real interpretation, are schools even safe in Nigeria? UNICEF interpretation of safe schools will be schools that have libraries, laboratories, well lit, water source. Many schools, who are even private schools, do not have this. Content. During the era of the MDGs, there was a lot of focus on achieving universal primary education, which is just let's enroll. In this SDGs era, we are talking more about the fact that the quality must be there, but the interpretation of quality itself is that we have learners who are empowered to become global citizens. Now, that sense of becoming global citizen means that with or without the educational system, they can contribute to the growth of their community and of that of the nation. And the curriculum is not supporting that right now. So if there are some people who are focused extensively on saying, let us improve the state of the curriculum, the content that our students are learning in school, to ensure that they become not better graduates, but better humans. There's a huge distinction in between the two. I studied biochemistry, you did food science and technology. And you can see that if they place us in some sector right now today, we will still function. And that is because we are indeed educated. And it's a function, by and large, of places where we've studied or learned. And that is the function that changing and tailoring the content can also do. Now let's talk about process. We have seen how rote learning and memorization has really bastardized the quality of our educational system. We used to call it the banking system of education, and it is the kind of training that our teachers get. They have been trained to believe that they are the custodian of knowledge, and they whiz into the classroom and they dictate notes. I mean, in the university, you have some lecturers who do not come up until 2 days to the exams. All of these things actually need to change, right? And then the last one is the outcome. We need to understand what is the mission or the purpose of the Nigerian educational system? Is it to create better people, or to create better producers, or to create graduates for an educational system, or to have an equipped citizenry? If we don't have a defined objective for our national education system, we will not be able to define what will be the outcome of the institutions that we have at all levels of education, from primary to secondary to tertiary. And I think that is one thing that some organizations can also do. So harmonizing all of these facts together would mean to say that we can do a lot, and at the same time we may do nothing. We can do a lot if institutions and organizations have very definitive purpose. Our own is very clear, right? We say we want to focus on foundational skills development, digital equity, girls' education, and access to education. As very large as that may sound, they are still very connective, right? And we say to do that, we want to leverage innovation, collaboration, and technology. If an organization like ours can have a very clear sense of direction like that, and all organizations or partners too have the same, alongside with a government that have, the technical know-how of how to transform the system according to the metrics that we have, or the global standards or global education practices, then we will be fine as a nation. Now, talking about the time scale, I mean, it depends on what we are focusing on, right? It can happen in 5 years, it can happen in 10 years. The rate of returns on education, particularly primary education, is long-term, no doubt. But some of the ones that we can have somewhat improved and immediate on will be tertiary education, for example. So it is really important that if the government, as well as us, can have that sense of direction, it will enable us to deliver on that in no time. We can put a date to it, and we can also put a date to it. There are a number of things that exudes from my persona when I talk about education. The first thing is the passion. I mean, when I open my mouth, people acknowledge the fact that, I know I love the work that I do. That connection in between this work and myself, is very testamentary of the potential that is there as someone who will go on with investment to make tremendous change to education in Nigeria, God's willing. That's one part. The other, and I think that somewhat is connected to potential, organizations would always see through you. So why the charisma is there, the energy is there, they also believe that by supporting this kind of person, we are able to improve on our own organizational objective as well. The second thing will be the proven track record. AREAi has moved from having zero to nothing to building an organization that is, growing at an unprecedented rate with the level of support. I mean, we were able to do much. I mean, when we started then, people like Godwin, like Mekit, they understand that in the beginning we used to say we do zero budget or no budget for high impact. And it's interesting because, we were able to do that. And that proven track record is there that even with less resources, we were able to achieve much impact. What about if we provide a bigger, source of resources of support for this organization? That is there as well. The third thing that I think may have informed that is also capacity. And I do tell people in this space that there is a hack to this thing. It is not a part-time job. Many of us that work in this space, and for those who have seen, who are dedicated funders, are those who commit day, night, afternoon to this craft. And I say it's a craft because we are like artists or musicians who smoke crack while they sing. Our own crack is when we see the work that we are doing manifesting before our eyes, and we are seeing beneficiaries who are being impacted, whose lives are being transformed, right? And based on that reality, we are devoted to the process of acquiring the needed competencies to be able to do that. So this organization, acknowledging and seeing that deliberate investment in building myself on the part of growing, and I tell people there is no program, either academic or professional, that I join that is not connected to the work that we do at AREAi. As an academic researcher on one side, I'm always deliberate to ensuring that there's a clear-cut connection in between the subject of academic inquiry and some programs we are currently implementing or even planning at AREAi. So acknowledging and seeing that there's a connection between research, policy, and practice at AREAi really convinced them. They believe that as an organization, if we give them this kind of support, they are not only able to amplify the reach, but also scale the impact, and also have a sense of evidence of the kind of work that they are doing. I mean, those are the things that stood out for me, that I felt made them, because we were only just 2 partners joining them this year, and that's unbelievable for me. So, as a sense of explanation, this is the Malala Fund, or Malala Fund, is an initiative of Malala, who is, quite very famous. The foundation is very, very dedicated on girls' education. However, just like us as an organization, they have different vehicles to which they drive the organization's vision. And one key component, or I would say a flagship program, is something called the Education Champions Network. I want to believe that the theory of change behind that flagship program is, let us identify young and promising education activists and advocates who are already doing great work across selected countries where we are interested in the state of girls' education, put them in a committed program that looks like a fellowship, provide them with tailored learning opportunities as well as a pool of financial resources, all geared towards a defined program, and see how they will run with that to improve on the work that they have done so far, or initiate new work that would invariably contribute to improvement in girls' education globally. That's what I believe, right? So, but some of the things that helped us and is a part of the work we're trying to deliver is DigiLens that we developed. So DigiLens, like I briefly mentioned, is a USSD and SMS learning platform. By just dialing a code on a basic feature phone, you have access to the Nigerian education system. You are able to Google search offline, treat past questions, ask teachers live questions on a mobile phone that doesn't have access to internet connectivity. And that is really unprecedented for them. So they felt this is really great, particularly because we are trying to work with girls in rural communities. But the mandate is clear. Go to your state and work across school, community, and state level. And that is why we call the program we're trying to implement an integrated program, because there is a direct connection in between the government. Some of the activities that we're doing will touch on the government, will touch at the community levels, as well as the state level, particularly at addressing the systemic or specific barriers against girls' education in Oyo State. So we are focused not only on enrollment, but retention as well as transition. So the overarching goal would be improving girls' enrollment, retention, and transition rates in Oyo, while also improving the educational quality at the same time. That is what is expected of us. That's the goal. It would be unwise of us to start a project at this point in time, and we don't acknowledge the tendency for the elections to affect that kind of project. We don't have any political affiliation, but we want to believe that with the kind of program we have, focused on supporting and augmenting the efforts of the current government or an incoming one or the same one when they come again, we would always have the receiving hand of the government. And it's interesting because it's a stage where we worked before. Interestingly as well, Malala Fund as well as our organization have an election advocacy plan. Okay. So that election advocacy plan, by and large, is to ensure that education remains a development priority before, during, and after the elections. right? If we tick the boxes of that election advocacy plan, we would stay on track with what we plan as regards the implementation of this project, right? I mean, election time for schools will not be closed. That's a fact. But one thing that can be affected will be some of the state level engagements that we want to do, and currently our risk assessment and mitigation plan ensures that we have some of these government engagement plans being put either before or after the elections. So we'll see where that would take us. Yeah. For me, I believe, to start with, yes, the financial resources will be enough. As an organization, we have this thing called the value for money analysis, VFM, which has enabled us over time, where in times when we do not even have money, we kick ass in terms of making impact. You understand what I mean? Now that we have this kind of financial support that we have, it won't deter us from ensuring that we can keep in between the confines of what we have, asked for. The beauty is that we already have some existing infrastructures, either technological or physical, that we can leverage on to advance some of the objectives of the program itself. Now, to the second part of the question, I mean, historically in this space, we have encountered such, and we have a very strong community engagement strategy. My stance on this is very clear. You can't exchange hands with money or exchange money with hands with taxpayer money.
Okay. Right.
By virtue of ethics, values, academic training, and professional upbringing, I don't do that. But one of the things that our community engagement strategy permits us to do is to allot or accord respect and recognition to stakeholders in a way that they are being compelled or obliged to dance to the tune of our music without asking for financial favors. And we've done that well enough. One key thing to say about us as an organization is historically we have some checks and balances. For example, we publish financial reports for external scrutiny as needed. We have financial obligation to funders as well. And it's very interesting because the peoples that we've worked with over time are those who do not even disburse financial resources to you at once. They do it in trenches, so that a next trench is subjective to what you've done and the financial prudency or transparency you've been able to demonstrate from a previous trench. I mean, we've seen that with FCDO, we've seen that with the award. We are going to see that with Malala Fund, right? So that in itself enables and ensures that there is no misappropriation that in one way can liken one to also belong to a court. The court might be a gathered one or a spread one, right? But as long as you continue to do what this court has been alleged to do, that means you're also part of the court. And we don't do that. I mean, one key thing that I also spoke about is this value for money analysis. We don't spend organizational funds on things that are extremely expensive. We go for one that you say is the cheapest option that you can get out there, just to ensure that we maintain some sort of financial discipline to ensure we can conserve funds at the same time use them for the right set of things. So that in itself are ways that we've been able to manage the process over time. We have both an internal and external auditor that we work with every year, and it's interesting because the checks and balances we have now is commensurate to the volume of finances we currently manage as an organization. So right now, it is not overwhelmingly high that we can be caught in a situation that can be compromising. I mean, we still have the finances well managed enough, and the idea is as we grow, if there are need to bring on more checks and balances to be able to ensure we stay on track, that would be helpful. It is interesting to note that when I started AREAi, we run on a very funny policy that changed in 2018. From 2014 to 2018, I can tell categorically that all financial support, I used to say people can transform their financial support into material support. I mean, it was a very funny legacy then because I was trying to ensure, but I mean, you cannot convert millions of dollars sometimes, or thousands of dollars I mean, into material support. You still have to manage. All you just have to do is maintain that there is a sense of transparency that you maintain not only as an organization, but as an individual as well. Yes, I aspire. If there's a possibility for that in the future, it is welcomed. But like many of our technocrats, they don't get appreciated. Some of them still not very much appreciated until they have worked for global organizations, go and serve the world through UNESCO, through UNICEF. And if by and large you're lucky enough to find a leader, maybe a president who acknowledges quality, you are being invited to transform the lot. I mean, there are a couple of names coming to my head, only that many of them, when they leave, they lose their roots. Yeah, and that's the problem. Many of them do not have that foundation. They just by and large went out to study, got retained in systems, did their contributions, and then they came back. Somewhat I don't think she had gone out, but I mean, I really appreciate how well she's grown within the system is Madam Adefisayo, the current Commissioner for Education in Lagos State. Very interesting public service growth, right? From, leading, I mean, it's very much applaudable how she became the Commissioner for Education, in Lagos. I like that kind, although she's not gone out. I don't think she's gone out, but it made a whole lot of sense. I mean, that's the only name I can throw. One challenge, I mean, amidst a myriad of challenges, would be selective support. During COVID-19, there is no door in this nation that we did not knock as an organization looking for support to pilot an outstandingly brilliant idea as DigiLens. There's no network, local network. We had to step outside the shores of the country, and the first door we knocked outside provided support. This is the case of so many young, evolving, emerging, or established education leaders in Nigeria. The resources might be indeed limited, which is acknowledged, but at the same time, create support for those that deserve it. Not only because they are connected to someone, many people have that same, and I think it's a perennial challenge in Nigeria. Right? So even though the talent is there, the proven track record is there, the potential is there, you still fail to attract the kind of support that you need to be able to, implement and impact lives as you desired. And that's the reason why many of us pitch our tents with international donors, because what they are interested in is, can you do this thing? Have you done it before? If we do this, will you be able to do this? And if you affirm that positively, they are willing to go all the way. That is there as well. By 2030, AREAi would reach 1 million beneficiaries, leveraging innovation, technology, and collaboration, no doubt. Now, I would emphasize on those three things I mentioned. The power of collaboration is what will enable us to go into Oyo and facilitate the development of a gender-responsive policy that can touch on every single school-age child in Oyo. That in itself, if AREAi spearheads that kind of an endeavor, that means that we have directly impact an estimated population of all school children in Oyo at that point in time. And we are moving into that kind of a space now where we don't run with solitary interventions leveraging on just our own organizational power or reach, which transforms the possibility to reach that target beneficiary population by 2030. Another thing is technology, and that's what I love about technology. While you can reach one conventionally, technology can enable you to reach 1,000. And that is the beauty of some of the things we are trying to do with the solutions that we are building, leveraging on vigilance. And a huge example too is fast track. This fast track, the scale up strategy of fast track is currently we are trying to validate the innovation that we're using to enable children to acquire foundational literacy and numeracy skills. And the idea would be we are going to deploy to scale with state agencies for mass education. These are agencies across many states, and in northern Nigeria we have them responsible for alternative or non-formal education as far as that of, let's say, out of school children or IDP children is concerned. If we are able to do that as well, imagine the population of IDP children that we have in IDP camps in, let's say, Abuja only, and we have a mandate through an established intervention that collaborates with them to do a widespread implementation. These are some of the go-to strategies that are already in the pipeline that enables us to be able to maximize that kind of reach by 2030. So before now, we've worked extensively on campaign or advocacy for improved girls' education. I mean, in 2016, 2017, we worked on something called the Value for Education campaign in Oyo. It was a grassroots campaign in selected communities trying to mobilize parents to ensure they can send their children, particularly female children, to school. And that in itself was hugely successful because we were able to leverage on both traditional and religious institutions to drive that to fruition. Subsequently, we've had some tailored programs that focused on girls, and a huge one would be Mission Zero Plastic. So in 2018, we conceived an idea on how we can solve two perennial challenges within the Nigerian space. We thought of the huge plastic pollution challenge, as well as the lack of infrastructure that affects girls as well. And one key thing we did was to conceive an idea called education in bottles. We wanted to create informal learning structures that allow us to incubate or provide learning opportunities for girls in rural communities. And what we did with that was to get support from the Coca-Cola Foundation. It was an $85,000 investment into a phase of that program called Mission Zero Plastic. Now, Mission Zero Plastic enabled us to recover 10 million plastic bottles across 6 states. And we still have all of these bottles housed while we finalize the two other components of that idea, which is the processing and transformation. How do we transform these plastic bottles into Lego bricks that can be used to construct spaces? We're still very much on that idea, which is now an intervention. And the idea is to build 18 of those structures to house nothing less than 3,200 girls. So we still have that, currently ongoing as a support. Most importantly, we have seen that one key thing that informed the design of DigiLens, which is our SMS and USSD learning platform, is that we got support to distribute mobile phones, about 500 of them, to beneficiaries in orphanages, motherless baby homes and schools in Abuja. And we saw that some of these girls cannot even operate a basic feature phone. Now, that is a really great problem. Now, having done our research through the Education Digital Equity Initiative, we also established that lack of digital skills or lack of digital awareness is also a huge prerequisite to inability to use or access digital tools or digital learning platforms, either the one that requires the internet or do not. So we came up with a program called Digital Skills Accelerator for Women and Girls. The World Bank, as well as the African Development Bank, has acknowledged digital skills as one of 5 components of the digital economy in Africa. The need for people, individuals, as well as government to develop digital skills. And that in itself can either be basic digital skills or advanced digital skills. So we have designed a program that we're starting very soon to support. This year alone, we are supporting 600 girls to acquire digital skills through a program we call Basic Digital Skills for Learning program. So our Digital Skills Accelerator for Women and Girls has two components, two programs. We have the Basic Digital Skills for Learning and the Advanced Digital Skills for Employability. The name in itself is very straightforward. The Basic Digital Skills is focused on underage girls in secondary schools. We want that before it becomes to a time when they begin to leverage on computer-based testing, going to write exams that requires them to use computers, they have acquired the basic proficiency in how to handle digital tools as well as digital platforms. So we have a 3-month program, which interestingly we've been able to attract support from Global Youth Mobilization for, and interestingly we have a private donor as well who provided room for us to acquire laptops that we'll use to implement that phase of the program. Now, a huge vehicle for the Advanced Digital Skills for Employability is to talking about our focus on the population of girls or women that are not in education, employment, or training. It's a category they call it NEET, not in education, employment, or training. So we are also focused on girls or women in that category. And that's what bettered DigiHub as well. So a huge component is that we want to have the first go-to location in Nigeria that you have a 24/7 access to acquisition of advanced digital skills. So we have a space that's been equipped with state-of-the-art facilities that women or girls walk in there any day of the week and they can learn or enroll into an advanced digital skills program. So we have 5 skills that we are focused on as far as that is concerned. We have product design, we have data science, we have web design and development, we have Microsoft IT support, as well as data science. We want to see how a girl who has just finished university education, who doesn't have any form of employment, want to acquire such a skill, and they have a physical location where they have access to the hardware, because that's a huge concern. There's so many people doing all of these kind of programs in Nigeria, but the painful part is that when there is access to software, there's no access to hardware. And if you see the way AREAi runs, we have a huge focus on last mile users, those who are at the bottom of the spectrum, who do not have access, who cannot afford. So the sense of our solution is to bridge the gap of affordability, accessibility, and availability, and that is what we are doing to respond using a number of these programs. So you have Mission Zero Plastic as a part of Education in Bottles, you have Digital Skills Accelerator for Women and Girls, and then now we have Getting Girls Equal. So these are some of the programmatic interventions that we are doing that are extremely focused on girls as far as I'm concerned.